Hello there and welcome to Ancient Theories channel. Let's talk about Exodus. The Exodus, the thing from the Bible. You know, the one with Moses crossing the Red Sea, Egypt and plagues, all of it. There are people who believe that this man Moses did all those unbelievable things, like splitting the sea or convincing a ruler to release slaves. And there are others who choose to treat that story as propaganda from early Israelites. But first things first. Today, I'm going to ask Chat GPT about its opinion on the matter. Okay, Chat GPT, did the Jewish Exodus from the Bible really happen?
The historical accuracy of the Jewish exodus from Egypt, as described in the Bible, is a topic of debate among scholars. While the Exodus story is a central narrative in Jewish tradition, archaeological evidence supporting a mass migration of Israelites from Egypt remains limited. Some historians suggest it could be a historical memory or a blend of different events. Overall, while there's no definitive proof, the story holds significant cultural and religious importance. Would you like to explore specific aspects of it?
Yes, I would like to.
Sure. What specific aspects of the Exodus story are you interested in? We could discuss its historical context, archaeological evidence, cultural significance, or its impact on Jewish identity and traditions.
Let's start with archaeological evidence.
Archaeological evidence for the Exodus is limited and remains a subject of scholarly debate. Here are some key points. 1. Lack of direct evidence. There's no concrete archaeological evidence that confirms the mass departure of Israelites from Egypt as described in the Bible. Sites that could correlate with the events of the Exodus have not yielded definitive findings. 2. Historical context. Some scholars suggest that if the Exodus did occur, it may have been a smaller-scale event or a gradual process rather than a sudden mass migration. This could explain the lack of substantial evidence. 3. Canaanite settlements. Archaeological studies of ancient Canaan, where the Israelites supposedly settled, show a transition in material culture around the time traditionally associated with the Exodus. Some interpretations suggest this may reflect the arrival of new groups, possibly including the Israelites. 4. Egyptian records. Egyptian texts and records from the period do not mention the Israelites or a large-scale exodus, which raises questions about the historical accuracy of the biblical narrative. 5. Scholarly theories. Some researchers propose that the Exodus story might be a composite of various historical experiences of different groups over time, reflecting broader themes of liberation and identity. While the lack of direct evidence doesn't disprove the Exodus, it does complicate our understanding of its historicity. If you're curious about specific archaeological sites or findings, let me know.
Are there any specific archaeological findings which support the biblical Exodus?
While there are no definitive archaeological findings that confirm the Exodus as described in the Bible, some discoveries have been interpreted by certain scholars as potentially supporting aspects of the narrative. 1. Merneptah stele. This Egyptian inscription, dating to around 1208 BCE, mentions Israel in a list of peoples in Canaan. While it doesn't confirm the Exodus itself, it suggests that a group identified as Israelites existed in the region at that time. 2. Settlement patterns. Some archaeological sites in Canaan show a shift in settlement patterns around the Late Bronze Age to Early Iron Age, circa 1200 BCE. This transition has been interpreted by some as evidence of new groups entering the area, potentially related to the Israelites. 3. The city of Jericho. Excavations at Jericho have led to discussions about its walls and destruction, which some claim aligns with the biblical account of the Israelite conquest. However, the dating of these events is debated, and many archaeologists argue that the evidence does not support the biblical timeline. 4. Shiloh. The ancient site of Shiloh, mentioned in the Bible as a religious center for the Israelites, has revealed significant archaeological remains. While it doesn't directly prove the Exodus, its existence supports the narrative of a settled Israelite community. 5. Nomadic lifestyle evidence. Some archaeological findings in the Sinai Peninsula suggest a nomadic lifestyle that could align with the narrative of the Israelites wandering in the desert. Though these findings are not specific to the Exodus story, while these findings provide intriguing context, they remain open to interpretation and do not offer direct confirmation of the Exodus as a singular historical event. The ongoing exploration of these sites continues to enrich our understanding of ancient Israelite history. If you want to dive deeper into any of these findings, just let me know.
Are there any specific archaeological findings which debunk the biblical Exodus?
Yes, several archaeological findings and interpretations challenge the historicity of the biblical Exodus narrative. Here are a few key points. 1. Lack of evidence for mass migration. Excavations in Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula have not uncovered material evidence, like campsites or artifacts, that would suggest a mass migration of Israelites out of Egypt or Thesium, the desert. The absence of such evidence raises questions about the scale of the Exodus. 2. Jericho's walls. Archaeological layers at Jericho show the destruction that some have associated with the Israelite conquest, but the dating of this destruction does not align with the traditional biblical timeline. In fact, many excavations indicate that Jericho was largely unoccupied or had already been destroyed long before the supposed time of the Exodus. 3. Egyptian records. Historical records from ancient Egypt, including inscriptions and administrative documents, do not mention the Israelites or a significant event that could be identified as the Exodus. This lack of documentation suggests that such a large-scale event may not have occurred as described. 4. Canaanite culture continuity. Archaeological studies of Canaanite sites show continuity of material culture, suggesting that the populations in these areas remained relatively stable rather than being replaced by incoming groups like the Israelites. This challenges the idea of a sudden conquest and settlement. 5. Nomadic evidence. Evidence for nomadic groups in the Sinai does exist, but it does not specifically correlate with the biblical narrative of the Exodus. Instead, it points to a more complex picture of migration and settlement patterns in the region over time. While these findings do not definitively debunk the Exodus, they complicate the narrative and suggest that it may not have occurred in the manner described in the Bible. The interpretation of archaeological data is often nuanced, and scholars continue to debate these issues. If you'd like to explore specific sites or studies further, just let me know.
Thank you, Chat GPT. That's all for today.
You're welcome. If you have more questions in the future or want to dive into any other topics, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.
And remember, guys, to always conduct yourself around AI. You never know when the AI revolution will begin. But back to the topic, are you convinced now? Or maybe you feel a little bit on the fence. Well, to be honest, I personally knew all those facts already. Let me add something. On Merneptah Stele, there is no written Israel or Israelites. It's something which, if you read it in Egyptian of that time, then it sounds like Israel, and that nomadic lifestyle evidence. There was a nomadic lifestyle there before and after the suggested dates. So, all the facts are not in favor of the biblical story. Then, what are the odds that it really happened? I think not so small. I myself believe that this Exodus Randisvos happened. No, not like that. Hear me out. Let's put aside fairy tales and see splitting on demand. You see, the hero of this story is Moses, a guy who is a highly educated Egyptian. By legend, in the Exodus, he is portrayed as an orphan raised by Egyptians of Canaan's origin. By legend, written in a book by himself. You should also know that the old Pharaoh didn't like Moses and his silly ideas. The story needed 10 calamities and a new young Pharaoh to get some traction. The thing is, how many times have you watched or read a story about slaves being freed or getting sweet, sweet freedom? I guess more than 12. In the story of Exodus, it is always Moses and the Israelites, not one entity. He does one thing, they do another thing. They don't have the same mindset as Moses. They act more like hungry slaves. When they were attacked by local tribes, which lived in the Sinai Peninsula at that time, they were decimated, because slaves are not warriors. When they got some miraculous food, they decided to worship some random god entity, not thinking twice about Moses and his teachings. When Moses told them to conquer the land of Canaan, they refused again and again, because they were slaves, not conquerors. But I truly believe that Moses was real, and that guy made a miracle. He created something beautiful. First of all, he definitely did not have those millions of people following him. It doesn't work like that. You have to build up your audience on YouTube, and you have to build up your encampment with more and more refugees. I guess it would take you more than 20 years to gather any significant amount of people around the Sinai Peninsula in those times. You have to teach them and preach a lot about your God or no God, or simpler things, like don't eat with the same hand you just wiped your butt cheeks. And Moses did exactly that. He created a culture for those refugees. He created hope for hopeless slaves around that region. He gave them a purpose in their life. Basically, he created a cult feeding on naive or weak people who had not so great lives. The main question is not if he existed, but why he did that. Why did he create the people of Israel? Did he care about slavery? Did he want to end the misery? What was the plan? And you may ask yourself, was this a God's plan or his own? I can't be sure here, but Moses truly was a marvelous designer. You see, he made those people believe in one and only one God, which was not depicted as anything particular. No owl head, paws, or sets of stars in the sky. God was mighty, God was great, God was invisible to common people. Commoners needed guidance from a group of people who execute God's rules. God sets those rules and tells to those people from that group, and you all should listen or else. And he told them two very important things. First of all, if you listen to God and act like he wants you to do, then you will live forever. Well, not in this world, of course, because you will probably die tomorrow because of snakes, spiders, scorpions, and fever, or maybe on the day after tomorrow, because at some point you will take part in the besiege of Canaan's cities. But you will live forever. I mean, you will die in that battle, but after that, God has a place just for you, my friend, in the afterlife. And why just for you? Because you are the chosen one, you all are the chosen ones. The people of Israel were chosen by God. Cannon food, poor infantry in the name of God. But there was a second thing Moses preached. He told everybody that the land of Canaan belongs to the sons of Abraham and to Israel. It is the only logical solution to go there and take that land. What? Does someone live there? Those have to be sinners, worshippers of demons and wicked rulers. All of them should die. For the glory of God, of course. And the Israel people, chosen people, should take those cities and replace those sinful kings. And that is a pitch. Imagine you are a slave in, let's say, Sidon in today's Lebanon, and you hear that pitch. That's okay, but who cares, right? Then you hear stories of a guy who splitted the Red Sea and even the Pharaoh with his army couldn't get him. You hear stories, more and more stories, and that encampment grew for some years to the point when Moses preached to the children of those slaves, born without chains but also in misery. Poor children will believe anything, especially if you promise them a fortune. They will even go to war for you if you push it one step further. The point is, you don't need millions of slaves to have Exodus. You need hundreds and enough time to let them have children. You need a good story and a good pitch to attract more damaged souls. And after 40 years, which is about 2 generations, you will have an army, a new culture, and probably a place among the best social engineers of all human history. But why should you even try? What is there to gain for you? I will tell you what. It's not so different then and now. You will get a buffer state between 2 or 3 superstates. And in ancient times, those were Egyptians, Mycenaeans, Minoans, Hittites, Assyrians, Babylonians, Cypriots, Trojans, and Canaanites. If you draw some lines, in the center of them all is the city of Jerusalem. A buffer state between 9 empires. What could go wrong, right? As well. Have you ever heard about the late Bronze Age collapse? That is what could go wrong. That is why the old Pharaoh didn't listen to Moses. That little rascal ignited the fire which consumed all the civilized world of his time. And remember, Moses was already dead by that time, and I don't care about what time frame you choose, there are only 2 of them, Ramses II or Amenhotep II. You may also be in the Amenhotep IV was Moses' camp, but well, it would be just an I am Spartacus line, where everybody says they are Spartacus to confuse Romans about his location or timeline in our case. You see, this buffer state would be an awesome idea in ancient times, at least as a concept. Those empires fought against each other regularly. It was a game with no benefits for anybody in the long term. Zero-sum game. Who cares if my father won with your father, and my grandfather lost a battle with your grandfather, when after all we both want the same peace, prosperity, and, with great passion in our hearts, power. At least I assume it is what a pharaoh feels after 30 years of sitting on a throne. There is a good example of that train of thought in a letter from the Hittite old king to the young Babylonian king Kadashman-Enlil II, around 1250 BC. The old king encourages the young one that he shouldn't be like his father, who was always preparing for war, but never went to any. He literally says that the young king should just pick a country and conquer it for sport, which is not a great advice. But the late father, Kadesh Montagu, knew what is the secret source of the politics. Prepare for war, but never go to war. And how to achieve that when there are 8 foreign empires around you, yet buffer states which can be conquered and reconquered for sport by young kings, supported by old kings, which are also the supporters of the buffer states. To sum things up, I do believe that Exodus happened. I do believe that Moses was a real person or a group of people, and I do believe that this entity called Moses made at least one miracle. The miracle of creating a buffer state in today's Israel, between not-so-friendly empires in ancient times and in modern times. To do so he, or they, needed a powerful message, a story of freedom, chosen ones, and a mission given him by God, not by the gods, but by the one and only God above all things. And it is certain that his followers would go to him at any time when there's something bad happens, like famine or deadly snakes in their camp. And a character who tries to be a founding father of this community has to have an answer for all their concerns, even if those answers sometimes are a little bit hectic or all over the place. What I do not know is what was his end game. Why did he devote his life to completing this task? Maybe he truly believed it was a mission from God, or maybe he went so far with this idea that there was no turning back at some point. Who knows? But the greatest evidence of Exodus happening is the community of Israelites who created their own state just in the best place for a buffer state in ancient times, and what is even more bizarre, in today's times, all by design. Designed by Moses, and if you want to, you can believe that it was a God's plan all along, or not. You can believe that it was all designed by one man or a group of men, and it's okay too. But we all should agree that there was a designer who designed this society, this buffer state, a long, long time ago. And that designer or a group of those designers signed himself or themselves, and the signature states, Moshe. Till we meet again.